Kino, and for my art analysis, I chose the topic racial hierarchy and racial mixing within colonial Mexico. To start you off with my presentation, I'd like to talk about where racial mixing started and the history about it. So I'm going to start at the Spanish conquest that happened in the early 16th century. So this is when the Aztec Empire was taken over by the Spaniards and the indigenous people. So this is when the Spanish and indigenous people really started mixing racially because they started having new offspring, whether this offspring was consented or forced. The offspring was a new combination of Spanish and indigenous blood. As later in time, Black Africans were introduced to this racial mixing because they were brought to New Spain for labor needs to be met. So now it was a mixing between the indigenous, the Spaniards, and the Black Africans. So this increased population and also increased racial mixing, which made it hard for people to understand where these new races were falling within the the hierarchy within colonial Mexico. So in order to organize this, the Spanish created the casta system. They created the casta system with the Spaniards at the top as the elites in order to keep their status. They use this organized status to place people based on their racial bloodline origin and assign them a status within the society. They created a racial hierarchy in New Spain with the Spaniards at the top to keep their elite status. So in order to visualize this, they had the casta paintings commissioned by artists. Normally, they were painted in Mexico City. A lot of them were. Something important to notice between these two paintings, or these two casta paintings, is that the one on the left-hand side is actually one single painting, and the one on the right-hand side is something that we more commonly see, which was a set of 16 individual paintings, but they were part of the Casta painting series, so they were all supposed to be displayed together. But the Casta paintings were created to show the racial hierarchy and where these new bloodlines were falling within social status. So in each family unit, there is a mother, a father, and 1 to 2 children. The children, of course, were the product of the two bloodlines coming together. They're also numbered, so you can see that on the left-hand side, they're numbered in the top right corner. And then underneath each family unit is a description of the bloodlines that are mixing, and then the new classification of that mixed race child. So the first painting that I analyzed was from Miguel Cabrera. It's titled From Spaniard and Morisca, Albino Girl, and this is created in 1763. It was an oil painting, and it depicted a Spanish father and a Morisca mother, and it created an albino female child offspring. So something to know about the albino children was that the Spanish thought and saw them as creatures. They didn't think that they were humans like the rest of people. They saw them kind of like as animals, and actually some people would even keep them as pets. They were seen to be from African descent, so there was some type of African bloodline in them that caused them to become albino, and this white lack of pigmentation they thought was reverting back to the way people were supposed to be, which was light skin in their eyes. We can see that the father in this picture is a Spaniard, and because of his light complexion, he is also wearing a leather jacket, which was commonly worn by Spanish soldiers. And he also has the gun next to him, which was also an indication of his Spanish bloodline. While the mother she is a Morisca, and she's a mixed race. So her clothing depicts her race being a mixture between European, Spanish, and Asian background. But her jewelry, which is pearls, and her earrings too, they show that she has an elite status, which is probably because of her Spaniard husband. And then, as you can see, the child has a mixture of both. She has the um, necklace, which shows her status, and then she has the really pale skin, which shows her race and her ethnicity. And the mixtures of her clothing to show the mixtures of the two bloodlines coming together. A good way to see status displayed through clothing is in Juan Rodriguez Juarez painting, which is titled Español el India Mostizo. And this was created in 1725. So we can see here that the mother, she is from indigenous background, as we know from the title, but her jewelry, which is pearls, you can't really see it too well here, but she's wearing pearls and pearl earrings, and her headpiece as well are showing that she does have that elite status, which is probably because she is married to a Spaniard. And then their children, their clothing and show their elite status, but then the pigmentation of their skin show the Indian background. So it's kind of a mixture of both that we can see here in this painting. So the second painting that I analyzed was from an unknown artist. It's titled Gasta Paintings, and it was done in the 18th century. This painting was done on a single canvas, which actually tells us a lot about who it was commissioned for. Since we don't know who painted it, we don't know who it was commissioned for, but we can infer that because it was done on a single canvas, it was done for a Spaniard, because normally they were the ones commissioning the paintings, but it was probably done for a lower elite Spaniard, because they didn't have enough money to get the bigger 16 individual paintings like the other Costa paintings. This was just done on one canvas. Also, the details of this painting aren't as detailed as the bigger paintings because it is smaller. So it tells us that the person this was commissioned for probably was of a lower elite status. The painting depicts the 16 different racial classifications, the different titles at the bottom, and then it has the common mother, father, child. We can also see that there are many goods displayed in these paintings. So these are natural goods which are produced from New Spain, and they were painted in the paintings so that way when people from Europe saw them, because these paintings were normally sent over across the Atlantic to Spanish rulers to show what exactly the colonial Mexico was looking like, what the people look like, what the goods look like, because they never actually stepped foot on colonial soil. So they would paint in their goods and all these diverse ethnicities in order to show that New Spain was flourishing and creating new things. And this gave them a positive outlook or a positive viewpoint from the Spanish rulers. You can see here that the Spaniards are placed at the top and mixed with other races, and then in the middle are more of like the indigenous people mixing with other races, and then the Black Africans are placed lower towards the bottom of the social status. You can see in this very first painting titled Español con India Mestizo, there's the Spanish father, and you can see that his race is shown through his clothing and also his skin color, and then the mother's indigenous background is shown through her dress and her skin pigmentation as well. And the child is actually a mix of both. So the child is wearing typical Spaniard clothing while having the darker complexion like his indigenous mother. So overall, the Casta paintings were used as a visual representation of the Casta system and the racial hierarchy that was taking place in New Spain. They were used to show the ethnic diversity as well as the diversity of the natural goods that were being produced in New Spain. And the Casta paintings allowed for a visual representation, so the Spaniards could maintain their elite status while also showing where these new racial combinations were falling within the Casta system. So they implemented the racial hierarchy ruled by social, economic, and legal status. Thank you.